Welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. Today I'd like to continue talking about that pivotal pop culture year, 1977. And we're coming to the most pivotal part of a pivotal year, which is the last third, September on through the end of the year. We'll probably go just slightly beyond that into January of 1978. Again, this episode will be a little bit light on Beach Boy content, but I do sort of want to set the scene for talking about the MIU album and also for talking about Pacific Ocean Blue, which I'd like to do in an episode very soon. So where were our old friends, the Beach Boys, in the latter part of 1977? As we talked about last time, the Beach Boys had missed out on a potentially very lucrative tour of the UK and Europe in the spring and summer of 1977, due reportedly, at least in part, to new manager Henry Lazarus failing to secure the necessary work visas. By the end of June, Henry Lazarus was out, and in August, former manager Steve Love, Mike Love's brother, returned. The Beach Boys also began playing concerts, at least in the US, in August of 1977, and they played some really large shows during this period. They played to 40,000 plus in Saratoga, New York on August 31st. There was a concert in Central Park on September 1st, the next day, which was reportedly attended by between 75,000 and 150,000 people, which I know is a wide range, but suffice to say it was a large concert. The next day they played to 40,000 in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Later, on the layover on the way back from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, on the tarmac in Newark, New Jersey, the band apparently erupted into a terrible argument. Mike and Dennis came to blows and had to be separated, and this was all in full view of Rolling Stone reporter John Svensson, who duly reported it in Rolling Stone. At this point, it seemed that the Beach Boys had effectively broken up. Though by October 14th, they were back on the road again and continued touring to the end of the year. This is a tour book from the 1977 tour. I'll try to show you some of this. Apparently, they continued to fight both on stage and off, particularly Dennis and Mike, with Brian sometimes being dragged into it one way or another, through the end of the year. The performances were reportedly poor to spotty, with a few good performances thrown in. I really would like to see a live album from this period if they can get together some decent performances, because they played a lot of stuff from Beach Boys' Love You, 15 Big Ones, a lot of what would now be considered deep cuts, a lot of things that didn't stay in their set list for a very long time. I didn't see this concert. I just picked up the tour book because it seemed like a particularly interesting period to me. Hope some of these pictures are enjoyable. I know I'm flashing them up here pretty quick. It's hard to show a tour book. Anyway, that's how the Beach Boys, sadly, wound up 1977. But as often happens with the Beach Boys, when you least expect it, something really good will come out of it, which is kind of what keeps me involved and not writing them off through some very dark periods. In this case, it was the release in September of 1977 of Dennis's Pacific Ocean Blue. And as I've said, I'd like to talk about this album in more detail later. But this was a real surprise when it came out in 1977. Much though Dennis had contributed a lot to albums over maybe the last 10 years or so, this was much better than anybody had a right to expect it would be. And again, real surprise, a real little ray of light in an otherwise dark period for the Beach Boys. What was going on pop culturally at the same time, September of 1977? Of course, in those days, that was when the new fall TV season started. That fall brought us the premiere of such shows as the San Pedro Beach Bums, Rafferty, Mulligan Stew, The Fitzpatricks, Man from Atlantis, Oregon Trail, Big Hawaii, Young Daniel Boone, The Red Fox Comedy Hour, Logan's Run, Betty White, and On Our Own. If you don't remember those shows, you're not alone. Almost nobody remembers them either. Almost every new series launched in the fall of 1977 failed. There were really only two new series that got any kind of traction. The first was the ensemble comedy Soap. The second was Mary Tyler Moore's spin-off Lou Grant, which was a rare occasion where a sitcom character was spun off into a drama, though as time went by, Lou Grant increasingly became comic relief in his own series, while the dramatic parts went to the supporting players. Though it had already been around for over a year, the freewheeling anarchic gong show hosted by game show magnate Chuck Barris suddenly became popular hip viewing late in 1977. And on September 24, 1977, Steve Martin returned to Saturday Night Live for the third time as guest host. And this was the first time he appeared with Dan Aykroyd in a sketch called The Festrunk Brothers, about two Czechoslovakian brothers, Jorge and Jortuk. This was the beginning of the rise of Steve Martin as a comedy superstar over the next couple of years, and resulted in many, many people overusing the phrase, "I am a wild and crazy guy," over the next 6 to 9 months. A notable early replacement for one of the failed TV shows was James at 15, which was a cringe-worthy drama that seemed like something conceived by your hip high school guidance counselor who could relate to the heavy scenes that today's youth were going through. It was marginally successful. James lasted to turn 16 when they changed the name of the show to James at 16, but sadly, James did not reach 17. In album releases, September brought us the magnificent Asia album by Steely Dan. Strangely, this album had kind of a delayed impact for some reason. The single Peg didn't hit the top 40 until January of 1978, and in the next summer, Deacon Blues and Josie were both hits, with other tracks from the album getting a lot of radio play. Though it came out in September 77, this is an album that I associate much more with 1978. Likewise, The Stranger by Billy Joel was released. Didn't have quite the delayed impact of Asia, but also spawned more hits in 1978 than in 77. Just the Way You Are was a hit at the end of 1977. Moving Out, Anthony's song Only the Good Die Young, and Always a Woman were hits into the fall of 1978. Striking While the Iron Was Hot, Sean Cassidy's second album, Born Late, was released early in October, with the hit Hey Deanie reaching number 6 late in 1977. That was his last top 30 hit. And Kansas, Point of No Return, was released around the same time, with its title track and the song Dust in the Wind getting lots of airplay through the late fall and early winter, and Dust in the Wind becoming a number 6 hit early in 1978. Hit singles in the fall of 1978 included Boogie Nights by Heatwave, Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue by Crystal Gale, Star Wars and the Cantina Band by Miko, Sentimental Lady by Bob Welch, Brick House by the Commodores, I Feel Love by Donna Summer, Heaven on the Seventh Floor by Paul Nicholas, and the big mega hit You Light Up My Life by Debbie Boone, which spent an astonishing 10 weeks at number 1 beginning October 15, 1977. You Light Up My Life was from a movie of the same name, which was heavily advertised on TV during the early fall of 1977, and they played the song, though it wasn't the Debbie Boone version. It was a bit like a paid 30-second music video airing in the late afternoons and early evenings through that period, and I'm sure really helped push this song to the top of the chart. And as fall closed in, we got more information about this new thing from England called punk rock, and the news was disturbing. There were bands with these confrontational names like The Clash, The Damned, The Stranglers, Sham 69, The Pork Dukes, and we heard stuff like they were always sticking pins through their faces, spitting on people. They brag that they don't brush their teeth. Their music is just noise, and they're coming to wipe out all the bands we love. There'll be no more Pink Floyd. There's going to be no more Yes. No more of really any of the bands. Any of the music that you love is all soon going to be swept away in a cacophony of anger. In the late fall of 1977, I remember standing outside my local indie record store where they had a 4x4 poster of the God Save the Queen 45 cover and thinking, oh my God, this is going to be the worst thing that ever happened. It was like the White Walkers from Game of Thrones. No matter what else was going on, punk was closing in. Now, I did eventually buy the single, as you can see, just to hear what it sounded like. I was ready for Lou Reed Metal Machine music type stuff, and I was kind of, though it was a lot more cacophonous and rough than what I was used to, it did have a chorus, verse, chorus to it, and, you know, I kind of enjoyed it, actually, so I was a little relieved to actually hear it. Of course, being a Midwestern teenager, I didn't really have much opinion about the British royal family. I actually preferred the B-side, Did You Know Wrong, which is a great track, but still didn't know what to make of this punk thing as the fall of 1977 was closing in. Of course, the mainstream rock releases continued. There was Simple Dreams by Linda Ronstadt with its hits Blue Bayou, It's So Easy, Tumblin' Dice, and Poor, Poor, Pitiful Me. This album finally unseated Rumors from the top of the album charts in December of 1977 after 31 weeks. Simple Dreams remained at the top spot for 5 weeks. Rod Stewart was back with Footloose and Fancy Free with the hit You're in My Heart. Hot Legs and I Was Only Joking got a lot of radio play as well. And in time for Christmas, there was the release of Paul Simon Greatest Hits, etc. with the new hit Slip Slidin' Away. At the end of the December 10th episode of Saturday Night Live, they announced next week's guest host and the musical guest, who they announced as the Sex Pistols. We were finally going to get to see the Sex Pistols on television and see what this punk rock thing was all about. During that week, we thought, well, this could be like the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. Everybody was going to tune in to see the Sex Pistols, see what shocking, horrifying things they did. That night, December 17th, 1977, they announced the musical guest for that night, Elvis Costello, somebody we had never heard of. But we figured this must be punk. Apparently, the Sex Pistols were on tour in Holland at the time, so I still don't know what happened there exactly. I'm sure it's well documented someplace, but I've never actually heard. Elvis Costello did make an impression, though. He looked very different from anything we'd ever seen. When he came out to play his second set, he and the Attractions began playing the song Less Than Zero. After a few bars, he stopped the band, apologized quickly to the audience, said this song has no place here, and launched into Radio Radio, which apparently producer Lorne Michaels was furious about. Though I think if Elvis Costello had not done anything remotely controversial that night, he was in danger of becoming remembered just as the guy who replaced the Sex Pistols on Saturday Night Live. We expected the unexpected that night, and at least Elvis Costello gave us something along those lines. 8 days later, it was Christmas. I have 2 younger brothers, and that Christmas my parents gave each one of us an album. I got the Randy Newman Little Criminals album. He was well known at the time for his appearances on Saturday Night Live and also for the hit satirical single Short People, which is included here. And before we move on, I'd like to just point out his outfit. This is the absolute outfit of the late 70s urban hipster. He's got a corduroy jacket, which I'm sure has suede patches on the elbows. He's got on this plaid shirt, jeans, a brown wide leather belt, and I'm sure if you could see the shoes, they would be brown leather and contoured to his toes like earth shoes. Maybe they even were earth shoes. A young urbanite could not dress much hipper than this in 1977. My brother Mike for Christmas got the new ELO album Out of the Blue. Turn to Stone had already been a hit, and Sweet Talking Woman and Mr. Blue Sky would keep this in the chart well into the summer of 1978. And my brother Jim got Queen, News of the World. We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions had already been a hit single, went to number 4 on the charts. Oh, and by the way, Mike and Jim, if you're watching, I didn't steal your records. I bought my own copies later. If you've misplaced yours, I don't know where they are. And my Uncle Dave gave me a gift certificate for Musicland at the mall for 1 album. And I remember standing there a few weeks later having a real internal debate about what I should do. Should I begin building my Bob Dylan back catalog by using it to buy Highway 61 Revisited? Or should I check out the Sex Pistols and purchase Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols? Well, after a long debate, I opted for the Bob Dylan album. Bob Dylan won out. The Sex Pistols obviously did end up in my collection. The Sex Pistols finally arrived in America in January 1978, played a few shows and quickly imploded, but there was a change in music. From there on, punk and what became new wave were a force to be reckoned with. Movies around Christmas time of 1978 included Oh God, starring George Burns and John Denver, The Goodbye Girl, starring Marcia Mason and Richard Dreyfuss. And for months we had been hearing about a blockbuster movie that was supposed to be coming at Christmas by the guy who directed Jaws. It was a sci-fi movie that was supposed to out Star Wars, Star Wars. Of course, it turned out to be the very confusingly titled Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This film also starred Richard Dreyfuss, and though it turned out to be virtually nothing like Star Wars, it was a big hit and is now, of course, recognized as a sci-fi classic. Then, of course, in December 1977, there was this dance movie starring the guy who played Vinnie Barbarino on Welcome Back, Kotter, and featuring songs by the Bee Gees. The movie was a big hit, and the album was a cultural juggernaut. Disco had been bubbling under for probably 3 years, but this brought it all into focus. The album unseated Linda Ronstadt from the top of the charts on January 21st, 1978, and stayed #1 for 21 weeks. Going into 1978, disco was king. Hope you enjoyed this look back at the year 1977. Please comment. I'd love to hear your recollections if you remember those days. If I missed anything culturally significant, please let me know. Also, we'll be back to more normal Beach Boy fare next week. Hope you enjoyed the little digression. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.